It had been 10 years, 10 long years of confusion, of love that had slowly turned into something else, something that didn't resemble love anymore. When Jacob and I first met, I was 22, wide eyed, and full of dreams. He was everything I thought I wanted: charming, good looking, and attentive. He swept me off my feet in ways I had never experienced before. I thought I had found my soulmate. At first, everything seemed perfect. We spent hours talking about our future, planning trips, and imagining a life together. The early days were filled with joy, excitement, and promises. I truly believed that we would spend the rest of our lives together. But as the years went on, things started to shift. Subtle changes at first, snide comments, controlling behavior, and a sense that something wasn't quite right. I pushed it off. I told myself it was just normal relationship stuff. But the more time passed, the more I started to feel like I was drowning in a sea of verbal abuse. Jacob had this way of making everything my fault. If something went wrong, I was the one to blame. He would call me names, criticize the way I looked, the way I acted, and the way I carried myself. The insults didn't stop. Over time, they became a constant hum in the background of my life, always there, always weighing me down. At first, I tried to shrug it off, thinking maybe it was just a rough patch, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. As I got older, his words started to sting more, and I found myself questioning everything. What was I really loved? Was this what relationships were supposed to feel like? Or was I just settling, convincing myself that things would get better? I had tried to talk to him about it. I would bring up my concerns, expressing how unhappy I was and how much his behavior hurt me. He would cry, telling me that he loved me and promised to change, but nothing ever changed. He would manipulate me with guilt, making me feel like I was the one who didn't appreciate him. Slowly, I began to realize that I was living in a cycle of emotional manipulation. No matter how much I begged for things to get better, they didn't. And then came the back pain. I've always had a bad back, years of bad posture, long hours at a desk, and just the natural wear and tear of life. The pain had started off as an annoying ache, something I could push through. But over the years, it had gotten worse. The constant nagging pain was turning into something more severe, more debilitating. I tried everything: over the counter painkillers, stretching, hot packs, but nothing worked. I couldn't focus at work, I couldn't sleep, and simple daily tasks became a chore. I remember mentioning it to Jacob once. I think I need to see a chiropractor, I said casually, thinking it was a reasonable suggestion. But he immediately dismissed the idea. I can help you. You don't need to see another man. Only I should be the one to touch you. You're mine. His words stung, and I could feel the possessiveness dripping from them. It wasn't about my health, it was about control. His jealousy had always been a red flag, but it had escalated. It wasn't just about me seeing other men, it was about him being the one who could fix me, who could take care of me. He didn't want me to seek help from anyone else. It was as though I was a possession, and possessions didn't get to make decisions for themselves. But I couldn't take the pain any longer. I had to do something. I couldn't live in agony just because Jacob was too possessive to let me get the help I needed. So, without telling him, I made an appointment with a chiropractor. I was scared, scared of how he would react, scared of the guilt he would lay on me, but I was more scared of the pain. The chiropractor was kind, professional, and gentle. He listened to my concerns, and within a few sessions, I began to feel relief. The tension in my back started to ease, and for the first time in months, I could walk without limping. The pain that had plagued me for so long started to fade, and with it came a new sense of freedom. I could move, breathe, and feel alive again. I felt like I was taking control of my life for the first time in years, but Jacob didn't see it that way. When he found out I had been seeing the chiropractor, he exploded. He accused me of cheating, of betraying him. "You think I'm not enough for you? You're letting another man touch you?" His words were like daggers. I had expected anger, but not this. It was as though my simple attempt at taking care of myself had been a personal betrayal. The fights that followed were brutal. Every argument was about my independence, my decision to take care of myself. He couldn't understand why I didn't trust him to help me. He accused me of being ungrateful, of not appreciating him. But the truth was, I was suffocating. I was trapped in a relationship that was no longer healthy. The verbal abuse, the manipulation, the control, it had all reached a boiling point, and I couldn't take it anymore. I began to feel the emotional toll of it all. My self esteem had been shattered. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had spent so many years trying to please him, trying to fix everything, that I had lost sight of myself. I had become a shell of the woman I once was. I didn't know what happiness felt like anymore. We argued more and more frequently. I would try to tell him how I felt, how unhappy I was, and how I couldn't keep living like this. Each time, he would cry, beg me to stay, and promise things would change. But nothing ever changed. It was just a cycle. He would cry, I would feel guilty, and then we would go back to pretending everything was fine. I reached a breaking point. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness for someone who didn't respect me, who didn't love me in the way I deserved to be loved. I finally gave him an ultimatum. Either you stop controlling me, stop isolating me, or I'm done. His response was predictable. He cried, begged, and promised to change. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever change. He had promised change so many times before, and every time he had failed to keep his word. The cycle would repeat itself until I couldn't take it anymore. And so I made the hardest decision of my life. I left. I walked away from 10 years of emotional abuse, manipulation, and control. I walked away from the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I had spent so many years living in fear, in pain, in a relationship that was toxic, but I was free now. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wondering what he would do next. I wasn't afraid to ask for help, to take care of myself. I was finally free to live my life on my terms. Leaving was hard, but staying would have been harder. I knew I deserved better. I deserved to be treated with respect, to be loved without control, and to have the freedom to make decisions for myself. And as I look back on everything, I realize that the most important relationship I had to fix was the one with myself. I had spent so many years neglecting my own needs, my own happiness, that I had forgotten what it meant to love myself. But now I was learning again. I was healing, and I was moving forward, stronger, more independent, and more aware of what I truly deserved in a relationship. In the end, I realized that leaving Jacob was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. A chapter where I would no longer settle for less than I deserved. A chapter where I could finally be free.